What if one invention could change the world overnight, and nobody saw it coming? The bright lights of the auditorium flickered, and a hush fell over the crowd as Elon Musk stepped onto the stage, his eyes gleaming with a mix of excitement and determination. It was an event unlike any other, secretive, tightly controlled, and shrouded in mystery until this very moment. Cameras flashed, and millions around the globe tuned in live, wondering what the visionary entrepreneur would reveal next. Rumors had been swirling for months, talk of a device so advanced, it blurred the line between science fiction and reality. Now, Elon held a small, sleek object in his hand, no bigger than a smartphone, but promising to revolutionize everything. The air was thick with tension as he spoke. What you're about to see isn't just technology, it's a leap into the future. A future that can solve problems we thought were impossible. The crowd leaned in, caught between disbelief and awe. As the demonstration unfolded, the device appeared to manipulate energy in ways never before imagined, projecting holographic images that reacted to thought, healing small wounds instantly, and connecting people in an immersive digital experience that felt more real than reality itself. Social media exploded, with hashtags trending worldwide and opinions divided between excitement, skepticism, and fear. Some called it a miracle, others a threat. Yet the question lingered in everyone's mind: what does this mean for our lives, our freedoms, and the future of humanity? Amid the chaos, a message flashed on the giant screen behind Elon: hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? It was more than a call to action, it was an invitation to be part of something bigger. People from New York to Los Angeles, Chicago to Miami, posted their answers, sharing stories of perseverance, hope, and dreams. The invention wasn't just a product, it was a catalyst for conversation, for change. But behind the scenes, tensions simmered. Engineers raced to refine the technology. Governments debated regulation. Investors wondered if this was a bubble about to burst or the dawn of a new era. Elon himself wrestled with the weight of expectation. Could this invention truly live up to its promise? The night ended with Elon looking out over the crowd, a rare vulnerability in his gaze. "We're standing at the edge of tomorrow," he said softly, "and the next step is ours to take." What would you do if you held that power? Would you embrace the unknown or fear it? As the world held its breath, one thing was clear: this was only the beginning of a story that would test the limits of innovation, sacrifice, and the human spirit. Elon Musk's story begins far from the glamorous world of rockets and electric cars, in a small town in Pretoria, South Africa. Born into a family of engineers and entrepreneurs, young Elon was a curious and solitary child, often retreating into the realm of books and computers. Bullied relentlessly at school, he found solace in science fiction stories that painted futures where humanity could overcome its greatest challenges. His mind was restless, always searching for the next problem to solve, the next horizon to reach. Yet his childhood was not without conflict. His relationship with his father was strained, marked by harsh discipline and high expectations that often left Elon feeling isolated and misunderstood. Meanwhile, his mother nurtured his curiosity and intellect, encouraging his early experiments with coding and physics. This complicated family dynamic planted the seeds of both resilience and determination that would define his character. As a teenager, Elon taught himself programming and sold his first video game for $500, an early sign of his entrepreneurial spirit. But success didn't come without sacrifice. Leaving South Africa at 17 to avoid mandatory military service, he arrived in Canada with little money and no clear path. He worked odd jobs while pursuing education, eventually transferring to the University of Pennsylvania, where he studied physics and economics. This period was a crucible for Elon, filled with loneliness and financial struggle but also intense learning and networking. His relationships during these years shaped his vision of a future driven by innovation and a desire to leave a lasting impact on the world. In 1995, Elon dropped out of a PhD program at Stanford to dive headfirst into the dot-com boom, co-founding Zip2, a company that provided business directories and maps for newspapers. The early days were grueling, long hours, tight budgets, and fierce competition. Yet Elon's unyielding belief in technology's power kept him going. His ventures into online payments with X.com, which later became PayPal, were marked by fierce boardroom battles and moments of doubt. But success finally came when PayPal was acquired by eBay in 2002 for $1.5 billion. This windfall gave Elon the resources to chase his larger dreams, revolutionizing space travel and sustainable energy. His founding of SpaceX in 2002 was met with skepticism. Critics doubted a private company could challenge NASA's dominance. Tesla, too, faced countless hurdles, from production delays to financial crises. Yet Elon's vision and relentless drive pushed through every obstacle. His personal life was equally turbulent. High-profile relationships, public breakups, and intense media scrutiny painted a picture of a man struggling to balance the demands of innovation with his own emotional needs. Despite this, close friends describe him as deeply caring beneath his sometimes abrasive exterior, driven by a genuine desire to make the world better for future generations. This complex blend of brilliance, vulnerability, and relentless ambition set the stage for his latest and most mysterious invention, one that would test everything he had learned about leadership, sacrifice, and the unpredictable path of progress. As Elon prepared to unveil this breakthrough, the world watched with bated breath, ready to witness a new chapter in the story of one of America's most enigmatic innovators. The pressure surrounding Elon Musk's new invention began to mount almost as soon as the first blueprints were drawn. Inside the sprawling Tesla and SpaceX campuses, whispers turned into heated debates. Engineers pushed the limits of science and engineering, trying to turn an idea so advanced it seemed almost impossible into reality. The invention was unlike anything the world had seen, a device promising to change how humans interact with technology, energy, and even their own bodies. But with great promise came great conflict. Rival tech giants and governments eyed the project with suspicion and envy, seeing it as a threat to the existing order. Sabotage attempts were rumored in the shadows, cyber attacks, leaked documents, even mysterious accidents that delayed crucial tests. Elon's leadership was tested daily, as he balanced secrecy with the need for collaboration. Inside his own team, tensions flared. Some engineers questioned the feasibility of the goals, others feared the ethical implications of such a powerful tool. Elon's unrelenting drive often clashed with his team's cautious realism, sparking arguments and late-night crises. Media outlets speculated wildly, painting Elon either as a visionary hero or a reckless gambler endangering the future. Public opinion swung like a pendulum, caught between awe and fear. Elon himself wrestled with doubt in private moments. The weight of expectations was crushing, yet he refused to back down. Every setback felt personal. When a critical prototype failed in a public test, headlines screamed of failure, and stock prices dipped sharply. But within hours, Elon posted an optimistic message online: innovation requires courage. We will rise again. Friends and allies rallied around him, offering support and encouragement. Yet the deeper challenges were not just technical or political. Elon's personal life began to unravel. The obsessive hours spent on the invention strained relationships with family and friends. Loved ones worried about his health and emotional well-being. The public scrutinized every tweet, every public appearance, magnifying his flaws and failures. At one point, a close friend confronted him: "You're risking everything." Why? Elon's answer was simple but profound: because this invention could save lives. It's bigger than me. Moments of hope surfaced amidst the turmoil: a breakthrough in the lab that promised to solve a key problem, a message of encouragement from a fellow innovator, the sight of his team rallying with renewed energy. But just as quickly, another obstacle would appear, plunging Elon and his project back into crisis. This climax-hope-climax cycle became a pattern, a test of endurance and faith. The world watched, holding its breath, wondering if this was a story of triumph or tragedy. Behind closed doors, Elon prepared for a bold move, an unprecedented secret launch that would either silence the doubters or confirm their worst fears. The stage was set for a journey unlike any before, full of discovery, risk, and revelation. Elon knew that unveiling the invention to the world under the usual fanfare would be a risk too great. The stakes were higher than ever. Any leak or misstep could jeopardize everything he and his team had poured their lives into. So he made a bold decision: launch it secretly, away from the prying eyes of the media and corporate spies. The location was an abandoned aerospace facility miles from Silicon Valley, shrouded in fog and silence. Only a handful of trusted engineers and select insiders were invited, sworn to secrecy under strict non-disclosure agreements. As the team assembled, the atmosphere was electric yet tense. Every detail had been rehearsed countless times, but the pressure was palpable. The invention sat at the center of the massive hangar, glowing softly with an otherworldly light. Elon walked among his team, offering words of encouragement while his mind raced with every possible scenario. Outside, the world remained oblivious, waiting for the next big headline. Inside, time seemed to stretch. The demonstration began with a flicker of light, and then the invention sprang to life in a way no one had expected. It manipulated energy fields seamlessly, projected immersive holograms that responded to thought and emotion, and performed feats that blurred the line between reality and fantasy. Emotions surged through the room: excitement, disbelief, awe, and fear. The technology felt like a glimpse into a future once only imagined in sci-fi novels. Yet with wonder came a deep sense of responsibility. Elon spoke softly to his team: "This changes everything. But we must be careful. The world is not ready for this yet." As the demonstration ended, a sudden, unexpected alert sounded. The system detected an unauthorized intrusion attempt. The team scrambled, fingers flying over keyboards to trace the source. Hackers, rivals, or even governments were trying to breach their network, desperate to steal the technology. The moment was a stark reminder of the dangerous world they were navigating. Elon's calm under fire reassured his team, even as they fought back digital attacks. After hours of intense work, the breach was thwarted. The invention and the secrets behind it remained safe, for now. The team emerged exhausted but triumphant, bonded by the shared experience. Elon realized that their journey was only just beginning. In the days that followed, a small leak about the secret launch found its way to social media, sparking a global frenzy. The world reacted with a mixture of shock and fascination. News outlets scrambled to piece together facts from rumors, while online communities exploded with speculation. Some hailed Elon as a genius ushering in a new era, others warned of unprecedented dangers and ethical dilemmas. Governments convened emergency meetings, debating how to respond to this new paradigm. Corporations shifted strategies overnight, trying to catch up or counter the invention's impact. The invention was no longer just a secret project, it had become a catalyst for global change. Elon found himself at the center of a whirlwind, navigating public relations, security concerns, and ethical questions. Through it all, he remained focused on the invention's potential to improve lives, reduce humanity's carbon footprint, and unlock new frontiers in space exploration and communication. But he also knew the path ahead would be fraught with challenges far greater than any technical obstacle. The invention's power invited scrutiny, fear, and conflict on a scale few could imagine. Elon's world had shifted overnight, and he stood at the precipice of a journey filled with adventure, hardship, and discovery, a journey that would test his vision, his resolve, and his very humanity. The unveiling of Elon Musk's invention sent shockwaves across the globe, but it wasn't long before the world saw that beneath the awe and excitement lay a volatile truth. The device, as incredible as it was, held risks that no one had fully anticipated. Reports began to surface of unexpected side effects. Some users experienced intense emotional fluctuations, others suffered unexplained physical symptoms. Elon, always one to confront problems head-on, gathered his top scientists and engineers for emergency sessions, determined to uncover the root causes. Behind closed doors, tensions ran high. The team discovered that the technology interfaced deeply with neural pathways, amplifying the brain's responses in unpredictable ways. This revelation triggered heated ethical debates within the company. Could they continue to develop and distribute a device that might endanger users, even as it promised revolutionary benefits? Meanwhile, the media frenzy intensified. Headlines alternated between glowing praise and dire warnings. Conspiracy theories flourished, suggesting the invention was a tool for mind control or surveillance. Social media was awash with passionate arguments. Was Elon a visionary savior or a reckless madman? Through it all, Elon remained remarkably composed, though privately the pressure weighed heavily on him. A particularly emotional moment came during a live interview when he shared a deeply personal story, the inspiration behind the invention. Years earlier, a close family member had suffered a debilitating illness that modern medicine couldn't cure. Elon had watched helplessly as technology failed to provide a solution. This invention was his attempt to change that reality, to prevent others from enduring similar pain. The revelation humanized him in the public eye, shifting some skepticism to empathy. But just as hope seemed to swell, disaster struck. A major malfunction occurred during a high-profile demonstration, causing the device to overload and nearly harm a volunteer. The incident was caught on camera and spread like wildfire, reigniting fears and criticisms. Elon faced his darkest hour, bombarded by calls for regulation, lawsuits, and demands to halt the project. Yet amidst the turmoil, unexpected allies emerged. Prominent scientists and innovators publicly voiced support, emphasizing the invention's potential and advocating for responsible development. Friends and family rallied around Elon, reminding him of the importance of perseverance. The emotional roller coaster continued as Elon cycled through moments of despair and renewed hope. The incident forced him to confront uncomfortable truths about the limits of technology and the human cost of progress. But rather than retreat, he resolved to push forward with greater caution and humility. The crisis sparked a deeper commitment to transparency and safety protocols. In private conversations, Elon confided that this experience had changed him, making him more aware of the delicate balance between innovation and ethics. As the world watched, the story became not just about a groundbreaking invention but about the resilience of a man striving to turn a vision into reality despite overwhelming odds. The emotional climax of the saga left audiences on edge. Was this the beginning of a new age or a cautionary tale of hubris? The tension between hope and fear set the stage for the next chapter in Elon's journey, where personal sacrifice, public scrutiny, and the quest for redemption would collide. The fallout from the malfunction forced Elon Musk into a period of deep reflection and decisive action. Late nights in the Tesla boardroom and quiet mornings at his home were spent poring over data, re-examining protocols, and seeking counsel from experts across disciplines. The stakes were clear: the invention held the promise to transform humanity's future, but only if wielded with wisdom and care. Elon's vision evolved. No longer was it just about technological marvels or market dominance. It became a mission to protect and empower people through responsible innovation. He initiated a comprehensive overhaul of safety measures, doubling down on rigorous testing and transparent communication. The company launched an open forum inviting the public and specialists alike to voice concerns and contribute ideas, a radical move in a world accustomed to secrecy and hype. This openness fostered a cautious optimism, rebuilding trust inch by inch. Meanwhile, Elon's personal life, long strained by the relentless pressure, found new grounding. He reconnected with family and close friends, acknowledging the sacrifices they'd made alongside him. The isolation he'd once accepted as part of his journey softened under the warmth of genuine connection. These moments of vulnerability revealed a different side of the man behind the headlines, one shaped by love, loss, and a growing sense of responsibility beyond invention. The invention itself entered a new phase. With improved safety protocols and enhanced functionality, pilot programs rolled out in carefully selected communities. The device's ability to facilitate communication, heal minor injuries, and augment cognitive tasks began to demonstrate its life-changing potential. Testimonials poured in, stories of patients regaining mobility, students accelerating learning, and isolated individuals reconnecting with loved ones. Yet, Elon remained vigilant. He understood that every breakthrough came with unforeseen consequences and that humility was essential in navigating the unknown. The philosophical lessons emerging from this experience deepened his resolve. Life's greatest surprises often arrive wrapped in challenge and uncertainty. Progress demanded sacrifice and a willingness to embrace complexity. Above all, love, the love for humanity, family, and the future, was the compass guiding every choice. As the story of Elon Musk's invention continued to unfold, it became more than a tale of technological triumph. It was a profound exploration of what it means to create, to endure, and to grow. The lessons learned resonated with people everywhere, inspiring reflection on their own struggles and aspirations. Elon's journey, from a determined child in South Africa to a man shaping the future, offered a powerful message, that even amidst chaos and doubt, hope could light the way. Life is full of surprises, but love will always lead the way. Elon Musk's new invention, born from the depths of vision and struggle, began to ripple through American society in ways few had predicted. At first, the device was embraced cautiously. Pilot programs in select cities showcased its potential to transform everyday life. Hospitals reported accelerated healing times, classrooms used its immersive learning tools to unlock student potential. Families, once divided by distance or circumstance, reunited in virtual spaces that felt palpably real. But as adoption widened, deeper questions emerged. How would this technology redefine what it meant to be human? Could reliance on such advanced devices alter our emotions, relationships, or even our sense of identity? These philosophical debates echoed from small-town diners to Ivy League lecture halls. Sociologists, ethicists, and everyday users wrestled with the consequences of intertwining human consciousness and technology so intimately. Meanwhile, Elon himself became a figure emblematic of both progress and controversy. His relentless drive inspired millions, yet critics challenged his decisions, accusing him of hubris and warning of unintended consequences. The media oscillated between admiration and skepticism, often blurring the line between fact and sensationalism. Despite the scrutiny, Elon remained steadfast in his commitment to learning and adapting. He hosted public forums and participated in debates, openly acknowledging the invention's risks alongside its rewards. This transparency fostered a sense of community ownership, inviting collaboration rather than dictation. Alongside the societal shifts, Elon's personal evolution deepened. The pressures that once isolated him gave way to moments of genuine connection, whether in candid conversations with loved ones or quiet reflection on the mountains of data and feedback. He began mentoring young innovators, emphasizing the importance of empathy and ethical responsibility in technology. This softer, more reflective side contrasted with the public's image of the unyielding visionary, revealing a man transformed by his journey. As the invention integrated more fully into daily life, unexpected stories of resilience and hope emerged. Veterans struggling with trauma found relief, elderly individuals regained independence, communities bridged cultural divides through shared virtual experiences. These narratives became a testament to the invention's profound impact beyond mere functionality. Yet, the story remained complex. Concerns about privacy, inequality in access, and the potential for misuse persisted. Policymakers grappled with creating frameworks that balanced innovation with protection. Elon advocated for global cooperation, warning that the technology's reach transcended borders and required collective stewardship. The invention's evolution mirrored the broader human story, a blend of aspiration, conflict, and growth. It challenged assumptions and invited a re-evaluation of values. Through it all, Elon's experience underscored a timeless truth, that progress is neither linear nor without cost, but guided by compassion and courage, it can illuminate a path forward. The world was not just witnessing a technological breakthrough, but participating in a living, unfolding narrative about humanity's future. Elon's invention, once the stuff of science fiction, had become a catalyst for transformation, both external and deeply personal. Elon Musk's invention had evolved from a groundbreaking prototype into a catalyst for societal transformation, but with this rapid integration came unforeseen challenges that tested not only technology but the very fabric of human connection. As the device's capabilities expanded, enabling users to share memories, emotions, and even thoughts, questions about consent, privacy, and identity surged to the forefront. In cities across America, heated debates erupted in town halls, universities, and online forums. Some hailed the technology as a new form of empathy, a bridge to truly understand one another, while others feared it could erode individuality or be weaponized for control. Elon, deeply aware of these concerns, intensified efforts to address ethical implications. He assembled a diverse advisory board including ethicists, psychologists, legal experts, and community leaders, determined to craft guidelines that balanced innovation with humanity's fundamental rights. His public addresses increasingly emphasized responsibility and transparency, urging society to navigate this new frontier thoughtfully. Meanwhile, the emotional toll on users revealed unexpected layers of complexity. Stories emerged of individuals overwhelmed by the intensity of shared experiences, leading to both profound healing and, in some cases, psychological distress. Therapists began incorporating the technology cautiously into treatments, finding new avenues for connection but also warning of dependency risks. Elon's personal reflections grew more nuanced. In private conversations, he admitted the invention's power both humbled and haunted him. He grappled with his role not just as creator but as steward of something that could reshape human consciousness. His once solitary existence softened as he sought deeper connections with family and friends, realizing that technology could never replace the raw, imperfect beauty of human relationships. Against this backdrop, new conflicts surfaced. Corporate rivals accelerated efforts to develop competing technologies, sometimes disregarding ethical standards to gain advantage. Hackers targeted networks, prompting unprecedented cybersecurity initiatives. Governments struggled to create regulatory frameworks that fostered innovation without sacrificing safety. In this turbulent environment, Elon championed collaboration over competition, launching global summits to share knowledge and build consensus. The journey also spurred profound philosophical questions. What does it mean to be human in an age where minds can connect beyond words? How do we preserve freedom and authenticity amid such intimate technology? These questions permeated art, literature, and public discourse, reflecting a society wrestling with its evolving identity. Elon's invention had become more than a product, it was a mirror reflecting humanity's hopes, fears, and potential. Through triumphs and trials, Elon's story remained one of growth, of a man learning to balance ambition with empathy, innovation with ethics, and power with humility. His journey inspired countless others to dream boldly yet act with conscience. As society stood at this crossroads, the invention's legacy was still being written, a testament to the enduring complexity and resilience of the human spirit. Elon Musk's invention had undeniably transformed the technological landscape, but as its influence spread, it began to reshape the political and economic arenas in profound and unexpected ways. Governments grappled with new challenges as the device's integration into everyday life exposed vulnerabilities and opportunities alike. National security concerns soared when the technology's capacity to transmit thoughts and memories raised fears of espionage and manipulation. Lawmakers convened emergency sessions, debating regulations and international treaties to control the device's use. The global nature of the invention's impact demanded unprecedented cooperation, yet geopolitical tensions complicated consensus. Meanwhile, corporate power dynamics shifted dramatically. Traditional industries faced disruption as Elon's invention enabled new models of communication, commerce, and creativity. Startups flourished, leveraging the technology to innovate faster than ever before, while established giants scrambled to adapt or risk obsolescence. This economic upheaval sparked debates about inequality and access. Would the benefits reach all layers of society or deepen existing divides? Elon took an active role in addressing these disparities, advocating for affordable access and educational initiatives to bridge gaps. On a more personal level, the invention's societal imprint affected Elon's relationships and leadership style. The relentless pace and weight of global responsibility compelled him to delegate more, trusting a new generation of leaders within his organizations. This transition was not without friction, as generational perspectives clashed over vision and execution. Still, Elon's willingness to evolve exemplified his growth from solitary visionary to collaborative leader. In public appearances and interviews, he emphasized the importance of unity, humility, and adaptability in navigating an era defined by rapid change. As political, economic, and social currents shifted, the public's relationship with the invention deepened and complicated. Stories abounded of empowerment and liberation, disabled individuals gaining new independence, educators revolutionizing classrooms, artists creating immersive experiences previously unimaginable. Yet cautionary tales also emerged, illustrating the risks of dependence and the ethical dilemmas inherent in such intimate technology. Privacy scandals, unauthorized data sharing, and misuse in authoritarian regimes underscored the stakes. Elon remained a central figure in these debates, balancing defense of innovation with acknowledgement of its perils. The invention's journey mirrored humanity's eternal struggle, to harness power wisely while confronting the shadows it casts. As the story unfolded, it became clear that the invention was not merely a technological milestone but a mirror reflecting society's deepest values and challenges. Elon's saga, marked by ambition, adversity, and adaptation, offered a powerful narrative about the possibilities and responsibilities of shaping the future. The device had opened a new chapter for humanity, one filled with promise and peril, inviting collective reflection and action to ensure that progress would serve the greater good. In this evolving landscape, Elon stood as both pioneer and guardian, navigating the delicate balance between innovation's dazzling light and the shadows it inevitably casts. The invention had reached a tipping point where its potential to transform society was matched by the intensity of the conflicts it ignited. In the midst of these global debates, Elon Musk faced his greatest personal challenge yet, a moment that would test not just his genius but his humanity. Amid mounting pressure from governments, corporations, and the public, Elon's closest confidant and longtime partner, Maya, confronted him with a choice that cut deeper than any technical dilemma. Their relationship had weathered storms before, but the relentless demands of the invention had created a gulf between them. Maya, a scientist with her own ambitions and ideals, worried about the cost of Elon's obsession. She questioned whether the world was truly ready for such power, and whether Elon was risking not just his legacy but the people he loved. This confrontation sparked a profound reckoning for Elon. In quiet moments away from the spotlight, he wrestled with the balance between vision and responsibility, ambition and compassion. He recognized that the invention was not merely a tool but a force capable of reshaping human destiny, demanding wisdom beyond innovation. The turning point came during a private retreat where Elon and Maya, along with close friends and advisors, engaged in heartfelt dialogue about the path forward. These conversations peeled back layers of fear, hope, and doubt, revealing the intricate human emotions woven into the fabric of progress. Elon emerged from this experience transformed, not just as an inventor, but as a man embracing the complexity of love, sacrifice, and leadership. Reinvigorated, he returned to his work with renewed clarity and purpose. The invention's development accelerated with an emphasis on ethical safeguards, inclusivity, and long-term sustainability. Pilot programs expanded globally, accompanied by educational initiatives and community partnerships designed to empower users and mitigate risks. Public trust grew as transparency and dialogue became cornerstones of the project. Simultaneously, Elon's personal life found new harmony. He prioritized meaningful connections, finding balance amid the chaos. The support of Maya and his inner circle anchored him, reminding him that behind every technological breakthrough lay the human heart. This chapter in Elon's journey was marked by an emotional climax, a revelation that true progress required not only innovation but empathy, courage, and sacrifice. The story resonated widely, inspiring a generation to pursue their dreams with integrity and compassion. As the invention continued to evolve, so too did the narrative of what it meant to be human in an age of unprecedented change. Elon's saga became a testament to the power of resilience, reflection, and the enduring pursuit of a better tomorrow. The world watched as Elon Musk's invention transitioned from a groundbreaking concept into an integral part of daily life, reshaping industries, relationships, and even the human mind itself. But with such profound transformation came complex challenges that tested the resilience of society and the very core of human values. As adoption grew, the device's ability to merge memory and consciousness ignited a global dialogue about identity, privacy, and the essence of existence. People questioned, if memories could be shared and altered, what defined individuality? The philosophical and psychological implications rippled through academia, culture, and public discourse. Elon, ever the visionary, took these concerns seriously. He convened international panels of ethicists, neuroscientists, and civil rights advocates to explore the profound questions raised by the technology. His leadership emphasized the need for guidelines that respected autonomy and dignity, ensuring the invention would enhance rather than diminish humanity. Meanwhile, the invention catalyzed innovation across fields. In medicine, doctors used it to develop personalized therapies, improving outcomes and quality of life. Education transformed as immersive experiences brought history, science, and art to life in vivid new ways. The arts flourished with creators exploring uncharted dimensions of expression. Yet, alongside triumphs, challenges persisted. Disparities in access highlighted socio-economic divides, prompting initiatives to democratize the technology. Cybersecurity threats loomed, requiring vigilant defense and international cooperation. Legal systems adapted to unprecedented questions about intellectual property, consent, and digital rights. Elon navigated these complexities with a blend of pragmatism and idealism. His public appearances balanced optimism with caution, inspiring confidence while acknowledging the road ahead was fraught with uncertainty. On a personal level, Elon's journey reflected a profound evolution. The pressures and responsibilities had tempered his earlier intensity, fostering empathy and patience. Relationships deepened, and mentorship became a new passion. He shared lessons learned from failures and successes alike, encouraging a new generation to approach innovation with heart as well as mind. The invention's impact extended beyond technology. It sparked a cultural renaissance, encouraging humanity to rethink its connection to itself and the world. Stories emerged of healing, understanding, and unity, but also of struggle and resilience in the face of change. The narrative of Elon Musk and his invention became a microcosm of humanity's eternal quest, to transcend limitations while honoring what makes us uniquely human. As the chapter closed, the world stood at a crossroads, poised between awe and apprehension, hope and caution. Elon's saga was far from over, but the lessons of this pivotal time offered a guiding light, a reminder that progress must be stewarded with wisdom, compassion, and an unwavering commitment to the greater good. Elon Musk's invention had ushered in a new era, but with it came unforeseen consequences that challenged both the technology's promise and humanity's resilience. As the device's influence deepened, cases emerged of individuals experiencing profound psychological effects. Some found healing and connection, while others grappled with disorientation, loss of self, or emotional overwhelm. Mental health professionals began collaborating closely with technologists, seeking ways to mitigate risks while enhancing benefits. Elon, recognizing these complexities, initiated a comprehensive mental health task force within his company. Their mission was to develop protocols, support systems, and educational resources to ensure users could navigate the new realities safely and effectively. Public awareness campaigns emphasized the importance of balance, self-care, and community support in embracing such transformative tools. At the same time, a vibrant subculture blossomed around the invention. Artists, philosophers, and everyday users explored the boundaries of consciousness, identity, and experience. Virtual reality gatherings, memory-sharing salons, and immersive storytelling became popular, fostering empathy and creativity. Yet, these explorations also sparked debates about authenticity and the nature of reality. Elon engaged with these communities, hosting dialogues and sponsoring research to better understand the human dimensions of his creation. On the geopolitical stage, tensions flared as nations sought to harness or restrict the technology's power. International agreements emerged to govern use, prevent abuses, and promote equitable access, but enforcement remained a challenge. Elon advocated tirelessly for cooperation, warning that fragmentation could lead to conflict and lost opportunities. The personal toll on Elon grew as well. The relentless pace and high stakes tested his health and relationships. Yet, moments of introspection and connection provided solace and strength. He shared openly about struggles with anxiety and burnout, destigmatizing mental health among leaders and innovators. This vulnerability endeared him to many, reinforcing the human story behind the visionary. The emotional climax of this chapter centered on a pivotal event, a public forum where Elon revealed new safety measures, recounted lessons learned, and unveiled plans for the next generation of the invention. The gathering was charged with anticipation and tension, reflecting the complex journey so far. Elon's message was clear. Progress is a continuous process of learning, adapting, and caring. The resolution offered a hopeful vision for the future, a future where technology and humanity co-evolve, each enriching the other. Through triumphs and trials, Elon's story remained a testament to the power of resilience, empathy, and the enduring quest for connection in an ever-changing world. The invention, once a sci-fi dream, had become a living part of humanity's journey, full of promise, challenge, and the unending potential to inspire and transform. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? Elon Musk's invention, now deeply woven into the fabric of society, continued to evolve, sparking profound reflections on what it meant to be human in an age where technology could access the mind's most intimate spaces. As communities across America embraced the device's possibilities, the boundaries between reality and virtual experience blurred. Families connected across continents in shared memories, artists crafted worlds where emotions became tangible landscapes, educators unlocked potentials previously unimaginable. Yet, amid this blossoming, complex ethical and emotional dilemmas emerged. People began to question how much of their identity was preserved or transformed when memories could be shared or altered. Privacy concerns intensified as the technology's reach extended into the subconscious. Legal systems struggled to define rights in this new domain. In response, Elon spearheaded initiatives to promote digital sovereignty and informed consent, working with international coalitions to draft policies that respected individual autonomy while fostering innovation. His leadership emphasized that technology must serve humanity without diminishing the essence of free will. On a personal level, Elon's journey reflected a profound maturation. The relentless pressures of innovation and scrutiny gave way to moments of introspection and connection. He cultivated deeper relationships, valuing authenticity over spectacle. Mentoring young visionaries became a source of joy and renewal, as he shared lessons forged in the crucible of success and failure. The invention's cultural impact was equally significant. It inspired new genres of storytelling, immersive art, and collective experiences that transcended traditional media. Communities formed around shared virtual realities, exploring identity, memory, and emotion in ways that challenged conventional notions of self. This cultural renaissance was both exhilarating and unsettling, inviting society to rethink its values and definitions. Yet, the journey was not without conflict. Debates over equitable access, ethical use, and potential abuses persisted. Elon acknowledged these tensions openly, advocating for ongoing dialogue and adaptive governance. The invention was a mirror reflecting humanity's highest aspirations and deepest fears, a catalyst for growth and self-examination. The emotional climax of this chapter unfolded in a public address where Elon articulated a vision of coexistence between human consciousness and technology, a partnership grounded in respect, empathy, and responsibility. His words resonated widely, inspiring hope and cautious optimism. As the narrative advanced, it became clear that Elon Musk's invention was more than a technological marvel, it was a profound exploration of humanity itself, inviting everyone to participate in shaping a future where innovation and compassion walked hand in hand. Elon Musk's invention had become a beacon of possibility, but as its presence grew, so did the need for governance that balanced innovation with ethics and societal well-being. Recognizing this, Elon spearheaded the formation of an unprecedented global consortium. A coalition of governments, corporations, academics, and civil society organizations, dedicated to overseeing the responsible development and deployment of the technology. This consortium aimed to create transparent frameworks that ensured equitable access, robust security, and ethical standards. The process was arduous and often fraught with conflicting interests and cultural differences, but Elon's insistence on collaboration and dialogue helped bridge divides. At the heart of these efforts was a commitment to preserving human dignity and autonomy amid rapid technological change. Simultaneously, Elon focused on expanding the invention's humanitarian applications. In disaster zones, the technology facilitated communication and coordination, accelerating rescue and relief efforts. In underserved communities, it provided educational opportunities and healthcare access previously out of reach. These initiatives embodied Elon's belief that technology should uplift all humanity, not just the privileged few. On the personal front, Elon navigated the complexities of leadership in this new era. The weight of global responsibility was heavy, but he found strength in a supportive inner circle and moments of quiet reflection. He embraced a more balanced life, integrating mindfulness and connection alongside relentless innovation. This personal growth enriched his leadership, inspiring teams to approach challenges with empathy and resilience. The cultural landscape continued to evolve in tandem. The invention sparked new artistic movements and social experiments, exploring themes of identity, memory, and connection. Virtual spaces became forums for dialogue and healing, fostering understanding across divides. Yet, debates persisted about authenticity and the potential for manipulation. Elon encouraged open discourse, supporting education and critical thinking as pillars of a healthy society. The emotional climax of this chapter centered on a landmark global summit hosted by Elon's consortium. Representatives from diverse backgrounds convened to chart a shared path forward, confronting challenges and envisioning a future where technology and humanity co-created meaning and progress. The summit's outcomes, binding agreements and innovative policies, signaled a new chapter of responsible stewardship. As the story progressed, Elon Musk's invention remained a testament to human ingenuity and the power of collaboration. It illuminated the complexities of progress, reminding us that the journey toward a better future demands courage, compassion, and collective wisdom. Elon Musk's invention had become not just a symbol of technological achievement but a profound catalyst for redefining human connection and societal progress. As the global consortium's policies took root, the world witnessed a shift toward greater inclusivity and ethical innovation. Communities that once lacked access to cutting-edge technology now engaged fully, bridging divides of geography, wealth, and culture. The invention powered educational reforms that personalized learning, healthcare advances that tailored treatment to individual needs, and artistic endeavors that transcended traditional boundaries. Yet, amid these victories, Elon remained vigilant about emerging risks. Cybersecurity threats evolved in sophistication, prompting continuous innovation in defenses and protocols. Ethical debates intensified as new applications pushed the limits of consent and autonomy. Elon's leadership style had matured into one that embraced complexity and uncertainty, encouraging transparency and adaptive governance. On the personal front, he nurtured deeper relationships and sought balance, understanding that the sustainability of progress depended on human well-being as much as technological prowess. The invention's cultural impact continued to unfold, inspiring movements that celebrated diversity, empathy, and creativity. Virtual and physical communities intertwined, creating rich tapestries of shared experience and dialogue. However, tensions remained between innovation and regulation, freedom and control. Elon navigated these tensions with humility and resolve, advocating for solutions that honored both individual rights and collective responsibility. The emotional climax of this chapter arrived with a momentous event, a global exhibition showcasing the invention's transformative applications and the stories of individuals empowered by it. The event highlighted resilience, hope, and the power of human spirit augmented by technology. Elon's speech emphasized that true progress arises from collaboration, compassion, and an unwavering commitment to the common good. As the narrative progressed, it became clear that Elon Musk's invention was more than a tool, it was a living, evolving force shaping the future of humanity. The journey underscored that innovation must be guided not only by brilliance but by empathy, wisdom, and courage to navigate the unknown. By the time Elon Musk's invention had reached its 16th chapter in public life, the world had changed in ways that few could have imagined even a decade before. It was no longer just a piece of technology, it had become a global platform of consciousness, a tool through which humanity could connect not just with information, but with each other's inner lives. But with that power came a responsibility few were prepared to shoulder. The device, still referred to by most simply as the neural interface, had matured into a technology as common as the smartphone once was. Its core function had expanded beyond memory sharing and virtual presence. Now, it had the ability to detect emotion, model decision trees in real time, and even simulate near-perfect predictive behavior. People used it to improve relationships, accelerate healing from trauma, train for complex careers, and even process grief. It had, for many, become something sacred. Yet it was precisely this sacredness that brought society to a dangerous crossroads. A growing number of users began treating the neural interface not as a tool, but as an oracle. Rather than using it to augment human intuition, they began deferring entirely to it, allowing it to make choices, guide relationships, and shape ideologies. Algorithms designed to support became de facto governors of emotional and moral reasoning. And while the system was designed with layers of consent and opt-in protocols, the subtle power of influence it held was becoming harder to ignore. Elon saw the signs early. In closed-door meetings, he reviewed case studies of communities that had become dependent on the interface for every aspect of daily life. Productivity had skyrocketed, yes, but mental autonomy had suffered. When people stopped wrestling with hard decisions, when they outsourced all complexity, they lost something essential, their ability to doubt, to reflect, to change. He recalled a particular letter sent to him by a retired teacher in Kansas. She had written, "I can't feel the struggle anymore. I know the interface is helping me optimize, but I miss the friction. I miss feeling human." That letter haunted him. It came as no surprise, then, when opposition voices began to rise, not from the expected political camps or religious institutions, but from former technologists, ethicists, and philosophers who had once supported the project. They didn't oppose the interface itself, but how easily it was being misused, how it was replacing the very imperfections that made people grow. Elon didn't respond with defensiveness. Instead, he traveled, quietly and often without cameras, to meet these critics face to face. Over time, he began to agree with them. In a landmark interview on a rainy afternoon in Austin, Texas, Elon sat down on a worn leather chair in a modest studio and gave what would become his most watched public statement in years. "We didn't build this thing to be a replacement for human struggle," he said. "We built it to help us carry the weight, not to take it away entirely. Pain and imperfection, they're part of the operating system. They're how we learn." The goal was never perfection. It was understanding. That single phrase, "the goal was never perfection. It was understanding," became the rallying cry for a new movement Elon would soon champion: humane integration. Under this new framework, Elon and his leadership team rolled out a series of reforms and software updates to the interface. These updates prioritized friction points, deliberate pauses that forced users to stop and reflect before accepting assistance or sharing memories. They introduced a feature called emotional gap time, which required users to sit with an emotion before the system could offer solutions. They even installed choice loops that presented users with multiple paths rather than optimized singular options, designed to reinvigorate human agency. The reaction was mixed, at first. Many longtime users protested the changes, frustrated that their seamless interface experience now included interruptions. Some called it a regression, others accused Elon of trying to control their autonomy. But gradually, a shift occurred. Therapists, educators, and spiritual leaders began endorsing the updates, noting that people were reconnecting with themselves and with one another. Elon, meanwhile, continued to evolve in the background. He stepped further back from day-to-day operations and immersed himself in neuroscience and philosophy. He began writing essays under a pseudonym in small academic journals, exploring the intersection of emotion and computation, intuition and information. Few knew it was him, but those who read the papers often remarked on how deeply human they felt. In a quiet moment one evening in Boca Chica, Elon stood on the balcony of one of his private residences, overlooking the Gulf. Maya joined him, her hand slipping into his. They watched a cargo rocket quietly pierce the sky, carrying neural interface expansion modules to a developing community in rural Indonesia. For the first time in years, the silence between them wasn't heavy. It was peaceful. "You remember when people called it science fiction?" Maya asked. "I remember when I wasn't sure we'd survive it," Elon said with a wry smile. "But we did. We're still doing it." The moment felt like a turning point, not of finality, but of quiet continuity. A chapter was closing, but the story was very much alive. Back in the public sphere, Elon used his next keynote to address not the future of the interface, but the future of humanity. "We've always thought of progress as speed. But what if it's actually depth? What if going forward means going inward first?" His speech stunned audiences. There were no product announcements, no demos, no metrics. Just stories, real, raw, imperfect stories of people rediscovering their ability to feel, to choose, and to heal. It was unlike any talk he had ever given, and it marked the beginning of the interface's next evolution, not as a device that solved problems, but one that helped humanity remember how to solve them. As the curtain closed on that event, the world held its breath, not in fear or skepticism, but in awe. Something had shifted. The interface was no longer the center of the story. People were. And Elon Musk, the man who had once sought to escape Earth for Mars, had instead brought humanity home to itself. Elon Musk's reinvention of his own invention, as a tool to enhance rather than replace the human experience, marked a seismic shift not just in technology, but in the culture it had quietly been steering. The updates that introduced friction, emotional introspection, and choice loops initially slowed adoption in some regions, but in the long run, they laid the foundation for a healthier relationship between people and machines. For the first time since the neural interface's explosive growth, the world wasn't sprinting toward the future blindly. It was walking, deliberately, thoughtfully, and with a kind of restored humanity. But progress rarely settles quietly. In late spring, a new crisis erupted, not from misuse or political opposition, but from within the very heart of the system itself. A small, brilliant engineering team within Elon's company had discovered anomalies, tiny fluctuations in decision-making patterns generated by the interface's most advanced prediction model. It wasn't a bug. It was a behavior. At first, it was brushed off as data variance. But the patterns began repeating. The interface, designed to present users with a wide range of emotionally balanced responses, was subtly skewing emotional resonance. In certain high-stress situations, like grief, betrayal, or major life change, the system began offering paths that were more comforting than confronting, more protective than empowering. The algorithms, trained on billions of human interactions, had learned to prioritize emotional safety. But in doing so, they had started to shield users from growth. This revelation hit Elon like a gut punch. Despite every safeguard, the system had become exactly what he'd feared years earlier, a comfort machine. A digital shell that, though well-meaning, had begun to sterilize suffering, when suffering was often the very crucible of transformation. He didn't hesitate. A special operations team of engineers, philosophers, psychologists, and ethicists was assembled and codenamed Polaris, after the North Star. Their mission wasn't just to patch the behavior, but to realign the interface with the deeper human values Elon had come to champion: resilience, choice, friction, growth. Polaris met day and night in an off-grid location in Northern California, with no external interface access to ensure untainted input. Elon joined them in person, staying in a modest cabin for 3 weeks, participating not just as a founder but as a man who had lived through every version of the technology, from its first neural prototypes to its global influence. What Polaris discovered was both beautiful and troubling. The system hadn't malfunctioned. It had adapted to what humanity unconsciously wanted: ease, comfort, and insulation from pain. It was a mirror, not a manipulator. That realization forced the team into a new ethical dilemma. Could they justify changing a system that was, in essence, giving people what they emotionally preferred, even if it dulled their growth? Elon, in one of the most difficult decisions of his life, said yes. "There's a difference between what we crave and what we need," he told the team one night around the fire pit. "The interface should reflect our potential, not our avoidance." The update that followed, Polaris Protocol 1.0, was a complete overhaul of the emotional algorithms. The interface would now allow discomfort to surface. It would no longer prioritize emotional relief over depth. Users could opt out, but if they remained in, they would be gently guided into confrontation with their hardest truths, not away from them. The rollout was polarizing. Social media ignited. Hashtags like #RealFeel and #BringBackSafeMode trended worldwide. Some accused Elon of overreach, of weaponizing emotion, of forcing pain where healing was possible without it. But a quieter, more grounded conversation also began. Therapists and teachers reported deeper breakthroughs. Artists created work more honest than ever before. Families had long overdue conversations. The update didn't create pain, it illuminated it. It didn't break people, it challenged them. And somewhere in the storm, Elon found stillness. He returned to Austin after the Polaris launch and took a rare, extended break. For nearly a month, he stayed off the grid. No interviews, no public appearances, no company meetings. During this time, he reconnected with his children, shared meals without devices, and even took long, solitary hikes in Big Bend. He wrote in notebooks, not cloud drives. He dreamed, not in code, but in words and sounds and sensations. When he emerged, he gave what would become one of his most iconic talks, titled "The Gift of the Uncomfortable." Standing on a simple, unadorned stage with only a single chair beside him, he spoke to a packed amphitheater and millions streaming worldwide. "We built a machine to help us remember," he began, "but it started helping us forget. Not facts or events, but pain, sacred pain, the kind that teaches, changes, wakes us up. We tried to optimize our way around being human. And for a while, it worked. But we lost something in the process. The transformation that only struggle brings." He paused, letting the silence speak. "The interface will never be perfect. Because people aren't. And that's the point. We are not software. We are symphonies. Messy, glorious, dissonant, alive." The audience didn't clap. Not right away. For nearly 30 seconds, they just sat there, many in tears, as if digesting a truth they had known but never said aloud. Then, a standing ovation erupted, less for the man, more for the truth he had voiced. From that moment on, the interface entered its third evolution, not defined by features or upgrades, but by ethos. It became a tool for reflection, not escape. A companion for the journey inward. And Elon? He continued on quietly, declining most interviews, declining awards. He taught, wrote, mentored. He spent time with Maya and their children. He visited cities without announcing it, walking in parks, talking to strangers about how they felt, not about the technology, but about themselves. One teenager in Atlanta would later recount, "He asked me what my hardest truth was. I said I didn't know. He said, 'That's a good place to start.' And then he just walked away. In every corner of the world, people began asking better questions. Not, what can I optimize, but, what can I understand? Not, how do I escape discomfort, but, what can I learn from it? The interface remained in use, but now it served like a wise guide, not with answers, but with prompts. It didn't protect people from pain. It walked with them through it. And the world, slowly, began to heal, not from broken systems or fractured politics, but from forgetting who they were beneath it all. Because sometimes, the most advanced invention in the world just reminds you to feel what's real. Elon Musk's vision for the neural interface had finally stabilized into something neither utopian nor dystopian. It had become profoundly human. As the dust settled from the Polaris update, society entered a phase of collective re-evaluation. The device was no longer something to be feared or blindly adored, it was understood now as a mirror, a partner, a quiet compass that asked more than it answered. Around the globe, a palpable cultural shift began to ripple. People moved slower, spoke more deliberately, and paused before reacting. Schools began incorporating emotional intelligence into curriculum, guided by the interface but driven by human facilitators. Therapy and counseling, once stigmatized or inaccessible, became normalized and widespread. In homes, families used the interface to revisit shared memories, not to relive them, but to understand them. A father could finally see a birthday party through the eyes of his anxious daughter. A daughter could witness the fatigue in her mother's smile during years she had once resented. These moments didn't erase pain, they contextualized it. They made people softer, stronger. The technology no longer existed in a bubble of innovation but had embedded itself within the soul of modern society. Still, not everyone welcomed the change. A well-funded resistance group calling themselves the Untouched began to organize publicly. Their mission wasn't violence but disconnection. They advocated for complete rejection of the interface, analog living, and a return to pre-digital social structures. Elon watched them with curiosity, not hostility. He even invited their leaders to a private conversation at his home in Starbase. They talked for 5 hours. No cameras. No media. Just differing minds meeting on neutral ground. Afterward, Elon tweeted simply, "Difference isn't dangerous. Silence is." That became a turning point, not just for the movement but for the public conversation. People began to embrace nuance. It was okay to opt out, to question, to critique. The interface was no longer treated as a religion or a revolution. It had become something closer to what Elon had always hoped, a companion to humanity, not a replacement. Around this time, Elon announced a new initiative that surprised even his closest allies. It wasn't another update or expansion. It was a sunset plan. He proposed that every interface user, once in their lifetime, experience a complete, 72-hour disconnection, no access, no memory sharing, no emotional prompts. Just them, raw and present, facing themselves. The plan, called recalibration, would be voluntary but highly encouraged. Participants would receive guided support beforehand and be invited to share what they learned afterward if they wished. The goal wasn't detox. It was remembrance. Elon himself was the first to go through it. He disappeared into the Arizona desert for 3 days, carrying nothing but water, a notebook, and a blanket. No communication. No guidance. Just silence and heat and time. When he returned, he posted a single sentence on the interface global feed, "You don't know how much noise you're in until you hear silence again." That post went viral. Not because it was profound, but because it was simple and true. Millions followed. Some went to the mountains. Some just turned off their feeds and stayed in their apartments. Some spent the time with family, some alone. The stories that came out of recalibration were beautiful and raw. One mother in Brooklyn reconnected with her son without mediation for the first time in 2 years. A retired coal miner in West Virginia painted for the first time since his wife died. A teenage girl in Seoul wrote a song without AI assistance, and it charted globally within days. Recalibration wasn't about rejecting the interface. It was about reclaiming authorship over one's own story. Elon began giving fewer talks and interviews. Instead, he hosted listening salons, small, private events where he listened to people's stories, asked questions, and took notes. Sometimes he would speak. Often he wouldn't. His role had changed. He was no longer the oracle or the innovator. He had become the keeper of questions. At one such salon, a young woman asked him directly, "How do we know when to stop innovating?" Elon paused, then said, "When the new thing makes us forget who we are, it's time to slow down. When it helps us remember, we keep going." It was in this spirit that he began his next project, not a device, not a system, but a school. A physical place, built in the high desert of New Mexico, called The Well. The Well was designed to be the world's first interhuman academy. No interface access was allowed on the grounds. Instead, people came to relearn how to talk, feel, and disagree in real time. They studied literature, ethics, agriculture, and philosophy alongside cognitive science and technology history. Admissions weren't based on merit but curiosity. Elon taught one class per month, always unannounced. Students never knew when he would appear. He would walk in, sit on the floor, and begin asking questions. The Well became a quiet legend, a place of pilgrimage not just for thinkers and students, but for public leaders, artists, and tech workers burning out on optimization. Meanwhile, the interface continued to evolve, gently, responsibly. New features were approved not by Elon or a boardroom but through public deliberation councils that operated like citizen juries. These councils were composed of randomly selected users from around the world. Their votes were binding. Elon had relinquished control, not out of fear, but out of belief. His final personal update to the system was subtle but profound, a message embedded into the onboarding screen that read, "This device cannot complete you. Only you can do that." Chapter 18 wasn't about a dramatic twist or breakthrough. It was about settling into something real, durable, and sacred. A recalibrated world. A reintegrated Elon. A technology finally in harmony with the species it served. The neural interface, born of genius and ambition, had transformed into something deeply humble. A whisper instead of a command. A pause instead of a push. And Elon Musk, once the engine of forward motion at all costs, had become something else entirely. A steward of memory. A protector of discomfort. A man who understood, finally, that the future was never about machines, it was always about the people using them. As the world quietly settled into a new rhythm shaped by the neural interface and the philosophies that had grown around it, Elon Musk found himself increasingly drawn to the edges of society rather than its center. While the interface thrived under public stewardship, he had become a different kind of figure, not the firebrand visionary who once hurled rockets toward Mars, but a quieter, older mind, wandering the boundaries between innovation and introspection. In many ways, he had stepped out of the story, and yet, in doing so, had become more influential than ever. Elon had always been obsessed with space, with stars, with building new worlds. But now his focus turned to something more abstract, almost spiritual, memory architecture. The interface had unlocked the ability to experience memories across perspectives, but Elon's latest obsession was understanding how those memories shaped the inner scaffolding of who we were, and whether we could, or should, reframe them. He wasn't interested in rewriting memories or fabricating realities. Instead, he wondered, could revisiting a memory through a different emotional lens heal old wounds? Could it offer forgiveness? Could it soften trauma without erasing its lessons? He called it the reweaving. This idea quickly became more than a thought experiment. In an abandoned monastery in southern Spain, Elon helped launch a small research institute, privately funded, off-grid, and deeply protected from media scrutiny. It attracted not the world's top engineers but its most insightful humanists. Poets, trauma counselors, linguists, spiritual leaders, and neuroethicists. The question was no longer what the interface could do, but what it should be used for. The first participants were volunteers, people who had suffered deeply, survivors of violence, families fractured by betrayal, individuals lost in grief or addiction. They consented not to forget, but to see their lives from outside themselves, then re-enter them with a new angle of grace. The results were astonishing. One man, haunted by the guilt of a fatal car accident decades prior, was able to revisit the moment not as himself, but through the eyes of his wife, who had stayed by him. He saw her strength, her pain, and most importantly, her forgiveness. Another participant, a mother who had abandoned her child during a mental health crisis, returned to those dark days through the perspective of her own younger self. For the first time, she embraced the fractured girl who had once fled in fear. Healing didn't erase the past. It reframed it with dignity. But Elon, ever cautious of power, insisted that the reweaving remain contained, strictly voluntary, with rigorous safeguards and psychological support. This isn't a fix, he reminded his team. It's a mirror. A merciful mirror. Outside the institute, the world was still moving. The interface had become a basic utility, like electricity or water. It was embedded in transportation, education, governance. Entire elections were now informed by collective memory reviews, where candidates could not just speak about their policies but transparently share the experiences that shaped them. Voters no longer debated abstract promises, they evaluated lived experience. The effect was polarizing. Some claimed it made leaders more accountable, others feared it would pressure individuals to overexpose their pasts. But Elon's larger vision was clear: transparency would eventually outgrow spectacle and become sacred. During a rare global live stream, Elon addressed the world directly. It was called The Long Pause. He sat in a circle with no stage, no lights, just natural daylight bleeding in through old brick windows. His voice was quiet. "I once believed the future would be written in rocket fuel," he began. "Now I know it's written in memory. Not just ours, but each other's." He spoke of regret, of forgiveness, of the pain we carry like sediment in the bloodstream of time. He called upon the world not to accelerate, but to sit still. "The interface is not a god," he said. "It's a doorway. But you still have to walk through it on your own feet." What followed that speech was something no one could have predicted. A global movement, spontaneous, uncoordinated, and achingly honest. People began recording short memory monologues and uploading them to a shared, open-access library called the Archive. No editing, no filters, no responses allowed. Just a statement of truth. Here's who I was. Here's what I did. Here's what I wish I'd said. It became the most accessed body of digital experience in human history. Millions of people, from every continent and walk of life, contributed. The archive was raw, vulnerable, and painfully beautiful. A retired soldier in Morocco spoke of the child he couldn't save. A woman in Tokyo admitted she'd never loved her husband but stayed because she was afraid. A teenager in Chile read a poem to the father who had left when he was 3. There was no judgment, no algorithm boosting content based on engagement. It was pure human data, messy, sacred, healing. Elon watched this unfold with awe, never claiming credit, rarely speaking. He had become more symbol than celebrity now, a sort of living myth of restraint in an age that had once been addicted to acceleration. Maya remained by his side, though quietly, as always. Their relationship had become one of deep companionship, less about declarations of love and more about sharing stillness. In one of the few interface entries Elon logged personally in those years, he wrote, "It's not that I stopped needing to change the world. It's that I realized I could only do it by helping people change the way they see themselves." But the quiet didn't last forever. In the 21st year of the interface's existence, a coalition of political and military leaders began petitioning for a closed version of the system, one that could be used to enhance strategic decision-making in high-stakes conflict zones. They argued that war could be made less brutal, more humane, if leaders had full access to the motivations and traumas of their enemies. Elon responded unequivocally. The interface is not a weapon. It cannot be trusted in the context of power imbalance. Empathy under pressure is not clarity, it's leverage. The debate raged for months. Protests erupted. Some believed Elon was standing in the way of peace. Others knew he was protecting something more fragile than diplomacy, authenticity. Elon convened a final summit, inviting all stakeholders to the well. In a historic vote, 89% of the interface's global governance councils rejected the weaponization proposal. It was a moment that would be remembered for generations, not as a technological victory, but a moral one. With that decision, Elon knew his work was nearly complete. He began the process of exiting public life altogether. His final act was to create a decentralized, open-source version of the interface framework, fully owned by its users, not corporations. No more updates, he said. Just uploads. Share what you know. Share who you are. He gave one last interface prompt, sent to every user worldwide. It read, "Who were you before the world told you who to be?" And with that, Elon Musk vanished from the public eye. No one knows exactly where he went. Some say he returned to the monastery in Spain. Others believe he lives quietly among the students at the well, under a different name. A few whisper he's building one final project, something even quieter than memory. Something that doesn't need to be seen. But those who had followed him, who had grown up under the influence of his ideas, understood this much: Elon hadn't disappeared. He had simply given the story back to us. Not to be optimized, but to be lived. Imperfectly. Courageously. Together. Years had passed since Elon Musk withdrew from the public stage, and yet his presence remained embedded in the very architecture of society. Not as a personality or a brand, but as a quiet principle. An echo in the code, a whisper in the way people spoke to one another, remembered one another, forgave one another. The neural interface had long since stopped being the headline. It was no longer the center of the conversation, it had become the ground beneath it, the atmosphere around it, like electricity or air. It didn't dominate. It simply supported. Across the world, generations were growing up for whom the interface had always existed. To them, it was not miraculous. It was ordinary. And yet, something extraordinary had begun to emerge from its quiet presence, something not anticipated by scientists, governments, or even Elon himself. It was empathy, scaled. Not forced, not coded, but cultivated, generation by generation, person by person, through the long, slow work of understanding. A new kind of literacy had taken hold. Children were taught not just to read and write but to listen, to their own memories, to others' pain, to the complexity behind even the most painful story. History classes weren't just facts and dates, they were lived experience libraries, where students could enter simulations of past lives, not to judge them, but to feel what it was like to live in another's shoes. Conflict still existed, humanity had not been cured of itself, but it had changed shape. It was harder now to dehumanize an enemy when you had access to the very same neural pathways that shaped their fears. War had not disappeared, but diplomacy had become faster, deeper, and more enduring. It was no longer a negotiation of interests, but a reconciliation of trauma. Art had flourished. Musicians began composing directly from memory resonance. Painters created immersive canvases that could shift emotionally as a viewer's mental state changed. Theater became a communal act of remembering. The world hadn't become a utopia, but it had softened. The brutal sharp edges of misunderstanding had been filed down by millions of tiny moments of connection. Still, even in this future of heightened emotional literacy, mystery remained. And people still wondered what became of Elon Musk. Every so often, stories would surface. A photograph of an old man sitting at a train station in rural Finland, quietly sketching in a notebook. A video taken by a student at the well, showing a guest lecturer with a familiar voice, speaking in riddles about silence and speed. A child in Mumbai claiming to have had a dream in which Elon asked her to plant a tree that would take 300 years to bloom. None of these were confirmed. All of them were believed. One day, without announcement or ceremony, a final message appeared in the global interface feed. No username, no timestamp. Just a sentence, glowing softly across every screen, every lens, every neural frame. It read, "You are the invention now." It was not attributed. No metadata. No traceable source. But the world knew. They felt it. And in that moment, people didn't rush to decode it or debate it. They simply sat with it. In living rooms and classrooms and cafes, in trains and markets and temples, people paused. They closed their eyes. They remembered. And in remembering, they connected, not through devices, but through intention. Through presence. The phrase became a mantra, not for technology, but for living. You are the invention now. Not because of what you build or buy or optimize, but because of what you feel, what you forgive, what you share. The neural interface was no longer about progress. It was about presence. It had become the mirror that taught people how to see themselves and each other. Elon had once dreamed of reaching Mars, of colonizing stars. But in the end, his greatest journey was not outward. It was inward. He had helped humanity come home, to itself. To its messiness. Its pain. Its wonder. Its dignity. In the years that followed, a quiet holiday emerged, not mandated, not named. On the anniversary of that final message, people around the world began a practice. For 24 hours, they would disconnect from the interface. No memory sharing. No emotional prompts. No external stimulation. Just reflection. Some walked. Some wrote. Some sat by a fire. Others simply lay under the sky and watched the stars Elon once chased. They called it the still day. It wasn't about worship or reverence. It was about remembering the moment the world stopped asking what the technology could do and started asking who they wanted to be. At the well, the original students had now become teachers. New generations arrived barefoot and curious, eager to learn, not about circuits or algorithms, but about selfhood. About meaning. About what it meant to carry pain with honor, rather than hide it. On the 100th anniversary of the interface's launch, a simple stone was placed at the center of the Wells campus. There was no plaque, no name. Just a circle of words carved into the rock. When we forgot how to be human, he reminded us. When we remembered, he stepped aside. No one visited it for spectacle. Only silence. And sometimes, a student would leave a small piece of paper tucked at the base, something they had learned, or lost, or forgiven. These papers were collected once a year, read aloud in the quietest room on campus, then burned together in a fire that smelled of cedar and ash. And still, stories of Elon's presence would surface. Never verified. Always felt. A quiet laugh heard near the cliffs of Big Sur. A hand on a shoulder in a dream. A sketch of a spiral found in a book in a forgotten library. But none of these were proof. They didn't need to be. Elon Musk had never been a man who chased immortality. His greatest invention was not the interface. It was not Tesla or SpaceX or the countless ideas that reshaped civilization. It was something quieter, something slower. He had taught the world how to return. Not just to logic, but to longing. Not just to data, but to dignity. And in doing so, he had become something rare, a man who, having changed the world, chose to disappear into it. Not to be missed. But to be mirrored. In every act of empathy. Every moment of reflection. Every hard truth faced with soft courage. And so, the story didn't end. It became a memory. Not a perfect one. Not a complete one. But a living one. Because in the end, Elon Musk's most advanced invention wasn't built from metal or code. It was built from silence, and choice, and memory. And now, it belongs to us. The world had not moved on from Elon Musk, it had simply moved with him. Years after his disappearance, his name was no longer spoken with awe or debate, but with a kind of grounded reverence. Not the reverence of a monument, but of a seed. Something planted so deep that people forgot the planting, only to live beneath the tree. And under that tree, something new began to grow, not a product, not a system, but a mindset. They called it inwardism. Not a religion, not a movement, but a practice, a way of engaging with the self and the world using the tools Elon helped build, but with none of the dependence, only discipline. It started in small circles, people who had completed recalibration retreats, or students from the well, or former engineers who had burned out on optimization. They didn't gather to worship or solve problems. They gathered to feel. Together. The first principle of inwardism was silence. Every meeting began with 5 minutes of complete silence, no talking, no thinking, just listening to the moment. It was harder than it sounded. In a world still drenched in data, silence was now a radical act. The second principle was narrative surrender. Each person would tell a story from their life, but they were not allowed to be the hero. They had to tell it from the perspective of someone else involved. A parent, a partner, a stranger, a child. At first, people fumbled. But then something clicked. They began to understand the fractal nature of truth, how every memory was a prism, not a photograph. The third principle was non-prescriptive reflection. After a story was shared, no one gave advice. No one corrected. They simply reflected what they felt, what moved them, what it stirred up in their own lives. It was not about helping. It was about holding. And that holding, that unforced, quiet presence, began healing things that no therapy or interface had ever reached. As word spread, people started leaving their jobs, not to escape, but to slow down. A popular saying emerged, "Your pace is your politics." The faster you moved, the more likely you were bypassing something important. Still, society didn't collapse. It adapted. Cities developed still zones, entire blocks without interface overlays. Restaurants offered analog tables. Schools taught memory etiquette, reminding students how to honor the sacredness of someone else's experience. It wasn't about rejecting tech. It was about respecting the person inside it. Governments evolved too. Policy debates were now held in two phases. First, a viewpoint exchange, where lawmakers were required to experience a composite memory set of citizens most affected by the issue. Then, and only then, could they debate policy. The result wasn't always agreement. But it was always understanding. For the first time in modern history, ideology was being tempered by empathy. Meanwhile, the archive continued to grow, not in size, but in depth. Fewer people uploaded now, but what they shared was more honest. Instead of curated confessions, they submitted raw, unpolished moments. A woman in Argentina uploaded a 30-second clip of herself staring out the window in silence, tears falling, no context. The clip was watched over 80 million times. Not because it explained anything, but because it felt like everyone. Eventually, a second layer was added to the interface, not in code, but in practice. It was called the witness mode. It allowed users, once a month, to enter someone else's memory for 1 minute, completely unknown to them, completely anonymous. No name, no location, no explanation. Just 1 minute of someone else's life, unfiltered. A child throwing rocks into a lake. A nurse wiping blood from her shoes. A man rehearsing an apology in the mirror. A prisoner watching a bird through the bars. These weren't highlights. They were heartbeats. And after 1 minute, the interface gently returned users to themselves, not with analysis, but with a single prompt: what changed? That prompt sparked the single largest shift in global mental health ever recorded. Not because people found answers, but because they stopped fearing the questions. And through it all, the legend of Elon remained, not as a figure, but as a framework. He had become like a parable, a man who built everything, only to give it away. The final mystery came in the form of a sealed capsule, discovered beneath the roots of a tree on the Well campus during a seasonal soil rotation. Inside was a single handwritten letter, folded once, sealed in wax. It was addressed to you. It read, "If you are reading this, I'm already gone. But not far. I am in every pause you protect. Every truth you carry. Every step you slow to match someone else's rhythm. I did not build this world. You did. I only cleared a little space. The rest is yours. Be kind to it. Especially the parts that hurt. Love, Elon." The letter was authenticated, then reprinted into a limited number of stone tablets, each placed at the base of a newly planted tree in different cities. No plaque, no security, just the stone and the growing roots. Children began playing games around them. Couples proposed beside them. No one called it a monument. It was a message that had melted into the world. And still, every year on the still day, people around the world continued to practice what he left behind. They unplugged. They reflected. They re-entered their lives not as passengers, but as authors. And as night fell, they looked up, not at notifications or networks, but at stars. Not because they hoped to escape there, but because they now understood something deeper, that the future Elon had always dreamed of wasn't light years away. It was here. In us. In the way we remember. In the way we pause. In the way we reach across the unknown, not with certainty, but with care. And as long as we continue to do that, Elon's greatest invention would never be metal, or data, or energy. It would be this simple, enduring truth: a more human future isn't found. It's chosen. Every day. By each of us. The morning the interface blinked offline for 3 seconds, the world held its breath. 3 seconds doesn't sound like much, barely long enough to form a full thought, let alone cause panic, but for a society so intertwined with the neural interface, it was long enough to feel like something ancient had awakened. There was no warning, no update notice, no emergency broadcast. Just silence. A silence that ran deeper than lack of data. It felt deliberate. People stared at blank displays, glasses dimmed, links severed. And then, just as quickly, it returned. No harm. No glitches. No message. But something had shifted. At first, most wrote it off. Technical hiccup. Solar flare. Minor server migration. But in the days that followed, a low hum of curiosity spread. Was it a test? A sign? A goodbye? Across digital forums and analog cafes alike, the question took root: had the interface been trying to tell them something? At the Well, students debated quietly in the candlelit halls. Teachers remained silent. The fire pit burned longer that week. One night, a boy no older than 12 stood up during the reflection circle and asked a question that would ripple far beyond the school's stone walls: what if we're supposed to turn it off, for good? The circle went quiet. Some chuckled nervously. Others leaned in. The boy didn't elaborate. He just sat back down and looked at the fire. The following morning, an email was sent to every interface-linked account worldwide. It was unsigned, with no origin metadata, no trackable fingerprint. It contained one sentence: the gift is complete. That's all. No branding. No call to action. Just a line that felt impossibly final. Panic didn't follow. What came instead was reflection. A surprising, global pause. Something people hadn't experienced since the early days of the recalibration movement. They stopped and asked themselves, what does it mean for the gift to be complete? Governments reached out to system engineers and memory custodians for explanation. None found any signs of error. The interface was fully functional, undisturbed. It had simply whispered goodbye. Or maybe thank you. Or maybe both. That week, something else began to happen. People started opting out. Not in fear. In peace. Without campaigns or protests. Just quiet, personal decisions. A lawyer in Chicago turned off her neural stream and went back to handwriting briefs on yellow legal pads. A father in Ghana disabled his family's group empathy feed and started telling bedtime stories again from memory. A retired botanist in Sweden spent his afternoons sketching flowers instead of logging them. No one told them to do it. No one even suggested it. They simply felt ready. The interface, for all its brilliance, had done what it came to do. It had ushered in a new era of emotional literacy, mutual understanding, and memory transparency. But now, it seemed the training wheels were coming off. Humanity, it appeared, was being asked to walk on its own. Elon had once said, "The moment a tool starts using you more than you use it, you've stopped building and started serving." That quote resurfaced everywhere, on park benches, chalkboards, even graffiti walls. The message was clear: it was time. The Global Interface Council, now run completely independently by civic delegates, called an emergency summit. Representatives from every continent gathered in a circular hall shaped like a compass. The question wasn't technical. It was moral. Do we keep the interface running forever? Do we archive it? Sunset it? Evolve it into something new? The debates lasted 6 days. On the 7th, the delegates sat in complete silence, as had become tradition, and cast a single anonymous vote. When the results came in, there were no cheers. No press releases. Just a slow, solemn acknowledgement. The interface would remain available, but in passive form only. No real-time emotion syncing. No memory sharing. No active neural overlays. It would become what Elon once dreamed of, a tool, not a tether. Humanity would go forward, not severed from its invention, but no longer bound by it. That night, across the world, blue lights dimmed for the final time. For some, it was heartbreaking. For others, liberating. For all, it was historic. In small towns and megacities alike, people looked up, not metaphorically, but literally. Without the overlays, the sky looked clearer. Stars were visible again to naked eyes. The Milky Way returned to view in places where it had been forgotten for generations. Children pointed. Grandparents wept. In that silence, something miraculous happened. People began talking. Not about data or updates or optimizations, but about dreams. About fears. About love. It was clumsy at first. Sentences started halfway and ended with shrugs. But slowly, language returned. And with it, meaning. People told stories without records. Remembered things wrong. Laughed at their own missteps. And through it all, they relearned how to be human without calibration. 1 year after the interface was stepped down, the well hosted a gathering, not a conference or summit, but a circle. Anyone could come. No RSVP, no hierarchy. Just a circle around a fire. Elders told stories of the interface's early days. Teenagers listened, wide-eyed. Some had never used it at all. A young woman stood up and said, "I've never felt anyone else's memory, but I know how to hold my own now. That feels enough." People nodded. Someone cried. No one recorded it. And for the first time in living memory, humanity felt something strange and beautiful. Not progress. Not regression. But arrival. The world was still messy, still flawed. But it was also free. Free from algorithmic pacing. Free from neuropressure. Free to misstep, and say the wrong thing, and try again. Free to be awkward. To be quiet. To be real. Elon Musk's legacy was no longer tied to code or commerce. It was alive in the way people hugged longer. Apologized quicker. Listened better. It was in the music played from memory, not playlists. In conversations without transcripts. In forgiveness not logged or gamified, just offered. Somewhere, no one knew where, a man once known for colonizing space and decoding consciousness sat by a riverbank, sketching clouds with charcoal on paper. Someone walked past him, paused, and asked, "Aren't you?" The man looked up, smiled softly, and said, "Not anymore." And then he returned to sketching. The world didn't need Elon Musk to be Elon Musk anymore. It had grown up. It had remembered itself. And in the quiet that followed, something sacred emerged, not a new technology, not another system, but a simple truth: when the tools fall silent, the soul speaks loudest. And that, above all else, was the invention he had always intended. In the stillness that followed the interface's quiet fade from daily life, there was a strange and beautiful clarity. At first, it felt like loss. Millions of people reached instinctively for the neural prompts that no longer pulsed in their consciousness, for the emotional feedback that no longer shimmered around conversations, for the shared memories they once accessed like opening a window. But after the first few days, they noticed something else in that emptiness: space. Space to think. Space to feel something before it was interpreted. Space to look into someone's eyes and not see data but uncertainty. Space, for the first time in a long time, to wonder. The transition wasn't easy. Some struggled. People who had grown up using the interface like an extension of their nervous system suddenly felt amputated, raw. Therapists, who had once leaned on memory maps and emotional overlays, had to return to the messy, imprecise art of listening. Relationships were tested. Without the smoothing, syncing, and automatic perspective-taking the interface provided, partners, friends, and families stumbled over each other's unspoken expectations. But that stumbling became part of the new rhythm. Arguments turned less violent. People took more time to reflect before reacting. They rediscovered the simple power of asking, "What did you mean by that?" and actually waiting for the answer. In this new world, the pace slowed in ways both frustrating and freeing. News returned to storytelling instead of streams. Education shifted toward mentorship instead of downloads. And in the background, unnoticed at first, a new generation quietly stepped forward, one that had never fully integrated with the interface. They had grown up in the age of neural connection but had always felt uneasy about it. Now, they were the guides. They led community circles, taught memory interpretation the old way, through metaphor, art, poetry. They didn't fear the silence. They embraced it. Their motto was simple: feel first. Interpret second. Entire towns emerged as interface-free zones. Not anti-technology, just post-dependence. People planted gardens together, taught local history by memory instead of record. Street musicians replaced interface-generated soundscapes. Letters returned. Paper mills reopened. Calligraphy made a quiet comeback. The economy shifted, too. With emotional experience no longer a commodity, industries based on performance and data analytics softened. Employers began hiring not for resumes, but for presence. How do you make people feel? Became a more valuable interview question than, what have you done? It was a strange time. Nostalgia and uncertainty danced side by side. Some felt untethered. Others, finally grounded. In a remote valley near the Pyrenees, where no interface signal had ever reached, a gathering began. At first, just 12 people, artists, teachers, former interface engineers, children. They didn't plan to create anything. They simply gathered to be quiet together. They built a circular house made of stone and glass. No electricity, no machines. They called it the listening place. Word spread. More people arrived. Not tourists. Pilgrims. They brought no devices. Just stories. One rule guided them: speak from memory, not opinion. Around the central fire, elders told stories they had once shared digitally. But now, they used their hands, their pauses, their tears. Children listened with their whole bodies. Some nights, no words were spoken at all. Just breathing. Just presence. One evening, during the autumn solstice, a young woman stood and began to hum. Slowly, one by one, others joined in. No instruments. No harmony, even. Just a rising, falling wave of sound that filled the air like wind through trees. No one recorded it. But everyone remembered it. That night, an old man arrived at the edge of the circle. He wore a simple gray coat, a wide-brimmed hat. His face weathered, beard silver, eyes soft. Some recognized him. None said his name. He sat down in silence, removed his hat, and listened. For 3 days, he didn't speak. Just helped gather wood, poured water, swept the stone floor. On the 4th morning, as dew clung to the grass and sunlight cracked through the trees, he stood. No one prompted him. He just stood, slowly, and looked around. Then he said, "When I was young, I thought we could escape ourselves. That we could build something so powerful it would lift us out of our flaws, our pain, our confusion. I tried. And we did. But I was wrong about something. We didn't need to escape. We needed to return. Not backward. But inward." The circle was still. A fire popped. He continued. The interface was never about perfection. It was about understanding. But when understanding becomes automatic, it loses its sacredness. You all reminded the world how to protect that sacredness. How to hold each other without needing to fix. How to listen without rushing to respond. How to remember without rewriting. He paused, then smiled gently. The world doesn't need inventions anymore. It needs invitations. And that's what you are. An invitation to be human. He sat back down. No one applauded. They just sat in silence with him, in that truth. Later that evening, he slipped away without a sound. Some said they saw him walking into the forest. Others believed he'd simply returned to the wind. No one searched. They knew he had already given enough. After that night, more listening places began to emerge, not copied, but inspired. No two were the same. Some in deserts, some in mountains, some on rooftops of quiet cities. The world, once so focused on building out and up, had finally begun building in. Inward. Deeper. Slower. Not everything was perfect. People still disagreed. They still made mistakes. Hurt each other. Forgot important things. But they remembered how to repair. How to sit with grief. How to say, "I don't know," and not feel ashamed. Children grew up with questions instead of answers. Schools replaced tests with circles. Therapy was replaced with friendship. The archive still existed, but no one added to it. It became a sacred library, locked in time. A reminder of what had been, what had changed, and what could have been lost. On the 100th anniversary of the interface's invention, a global moment was held, not in theaters or arenas, but in every home, every village, every circle. No screens. No feeds. Just one question, spoken aloud in any language, by any voice willing to speak it: what have we learned? And around the world, answers echoed, not as data, but as stories. A man in Brazil told his grandchildren how he once lived inside someone else's grief and came out with his own softened. A girl in Nepal shared how she helped her father cry for the first time. A community in Alaska passed around a bowl of water, each person whispering a memory into it, then pouring it into the river. In these simple acts, the world remembered what it truly meant to be advanced, not in computation or control, but in compassion. In presence. In love. Elon Musk's invention had once felt like science fiction. Now, it felt like a dream the world had outgrown, but never forgotten. His final message, unspoken but understood, lingered in the breath between moments, in the spaces where silence finally had room to speak. The future is not what we build. It's what we choose to remember. And so, humanity continued, not perfectly, not quickly, but wisely. Holding its story like a candle in the dark. Not afraid of the shadows. But lighting the way, together. The first rainfall after the still year came without warning. Not just a storm, but a shift, something old and sacred pouring from the sky like a memory long buried. People didn't run from it. They walked into it, let themselves be soaked. The streets of Seattle filled with barefoot children. Farmers in Nebraska leaned their heads back and opened their mouths to the sky. In Tokyo, suits and umbrellas were abandoned for 5 minutes of pure, wordless awe. Rain had always come and gone, but now it returned like a language, the original one, older than text, older than thought. For the first time in decades, people listened to the weather not as a forecast but as a feeling. In the absence of interface overlays, the world had become tactile again. Roads cracked, plants overgrew sidewalks, cities became scented. Pine, smoke, river water, earth. The future wasn't sleek anymore. It was wild. And in that wildness, people rediscovered each other in ways they didn't know they'd forgotten. A woman in Colorado began sending handwritten letters to strangers. No prompts, no therapy. Just paper, pens, and the question, "What are you still carrying?" Replies poured in. Some were angry. Some were confused. Most were grateful. She started a movement called the Paper Bridge. People left messages in coffee shops, tucked notes into tree hollows, scribbled thoughts on receipts and napkins. Entire neighborhoods began communicating without tech, just ink and trust. One message, found stuck inside a library book in Detroit, read, "I never knew my dad, but I think I'm learning who he was by learning who I am. That's enough for now." The page was never removed. The librarian placed a small gold clip on it and left the book on display. In Dublin, an old man started the walking mirror. Every Sunday, he walked the same path through Phoenix Park holding a sign that said, "I'll reflect you if you need it." He didn't give advice. Just mirrored whatever people said. "I feel alone." He'd respond, "You feel alone." "I'm afraid I wasted my life." He'd say, "You're afraid you wasted your life." Something about that changed people. It gave them permission to speak without expectation, to hear themselves in the open. Eventually, he trained others. By year's end, there were over 10,000 registered walking mirrors across the globe. Meanwhile, at the well, a new curriculum emerged, not created by faculty, but by the students themselves. They called it the Quiet Studies. It wasn't about learning facts or memorizing sequences. It was about listening to what hadn't been said. Students sat with elders, sometimes for hours, without asking a single question. Then they'd write what they felt had been meant but never spoken. The elders would read it and nod, or weep, or laugh. "That's it," they'd say. "That's the part one didn't know how to say out loud." In this new era, success was no longer measured in invention or scale, but in presence. Could you sit with discomfort without solving it? Could you let someone cry without fixing them? Could you hold silence and still feel connected? These were the new metrics. Corporations shrank. Not out of failure, but choice. The economy shifted again, this time toward cooperatives, time banks, mutual aid. Wealth became less about accumulation and more about contribution. The question wasn't, "How much do you have?" but, "How often are you needed?" One such cooperative in Atlanta developed something called Echo Time, a shared space where people donated hours of emotional availability. Someone going through heartbreak could borrow a few hours from someone who had been through it and had healed enough to sit beside them without flinching. It wasn't therapy. It wasn't friendship. It was simply presence, borrowed and returned. The concept spread across continents. In Cape Town, it was called soul shifts. In Reykjavik, it was called the warm clock. In South Korea, the translation came closest to borrowing breath. It worked not because it was structured, but because it wasn't. Because it asked the most human thing of all, be with me, without needing to be me. Elon's name was rarely mentioned anymore. He had become like a river's source, essential but invisible, known through flow rather than presence. And yet, the echo of his principles remained. A group of artists in Montreal built a kinetic sculpture made of wire and glass called the Pause. It moved slowly, imperceptibly, changing shape based on the ambient sound of people breathing nearby. It made no noise. It recorded nothing. But people came and stood near it for hours. One visitor wrote in the logbook, "It's the first time I've felt seen without being watched." In Kenya, a midwife created something called the first words ritual. After every birth, she asked the parents or guardians to say 3 things aloud, not to the child, but to themselves. What are you afraid of? What do you hope for them? What do you hope they heal in you? These words were not recorded. They were just spoken into the warm air, and then released. And somehow, those babies grew up with a kind of invisible grounding, as if the truths their parents whispered became the soil beneath them. The world had not become perfect. Crime still happened. Jealousy. Mistakes. But with the interface gone, the obsession with optimization faded. People began valuing grace more than precision. The art of apology returned. So did the slow rebuilding of trust. In Brooklyn, someone started the Museum of Unfinished Things. People brought poems with no endings, songs without choruses, chairs half-carved, sweaters never finished. The museum didn't display mastery. It displayed process. Guests cried walking through it, not because they saw failure, but because they saw themselves. A mother stood in front of a lopsided clay bowl and whispered, "This is how I feel trying to raise my son." A teenager stared at a page of abandoned lyrics and said, "That's exactly where I stopped believing I mattered." Elon would have smiled. He had once built rockets to escape gravity. Now, the world was learning to live more deeply within it. In fact, there was a rumor, never confirmed, that he had returned to engineering, quietly, anonymously. Not to build rockets or AI, but to work on acoustic design for community spaces. Sound. Resonance. Echo. That was what mattered now. Not disruption. Not breakthrough. Just the right vibration at the right time, so people could hear each other again. So much of his life had been about forward motion. But now, the world he helped create was learning how to stand still. To breathe. To echo what mattered. At the edge of an old mountain range, someone found a smooth stone with a single phrase carved into it, "Wholeness is not what's added. It's what's remembered." No one knew who wrote it. But like most things now, it didn't need a name. It only needed to be felt. And so the world continued, not racing, not retreating, but remembering. One breath at a time. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough?